Hi everyone, welcome to this presentation on how to write a good report, a Lendsqr guide. So the goal of this presentation, essentially as stated in the title, is how to write a good report. But it's also from a much broader perspective, how to have better communication, how to ensure that communications, especially in a business setting, are properly done and handled. So this is our outline, which I'll be speaking on why good reports matter. It looks like a lot, but it's not. It's essentially why good reports matter, the problem with bad reports, and we go inside each section of a report and we buttress with examples our points of some reports or some parts of reports are not written well, or there's a right and a wrong way to write certain parts of a report, right? So we can move on to why a good report matter. Why good reports matter. So good reports matter because imagine you're a supervisor and you have about 15 supervisees. What is their mode of communication with you? So their mode of communication would be through maybe chats, maybe DMs. Maybe you're the kind of person who can handle 15 of them coming to your DMs every single time. But it's not sustainable when that number goes to 20 or 25 or 30, right? And it's not sustainable when the frequency of their communication has increased so much. So they're telling you every hour what's happening, every 5 hours what's happening. At the point in time, you need a consolidation. So you need a consolidation of that information. And that's what a report is, right? A report is essentially a consolidation of the information that has been generated from this particular person's project over the past period being considered. So it could be a day, it could be a month, it could be a week. So essentially that is it. So imagine you have a supervisee who is handling a project and you are not involved in that project, you're not as involved in that project, you're not micromanaging. The only way for you to understand what's happening, your only window into the health and the state of that project is a report. So that's why a good report matters, because that report is the only way you can understand what is happening, what are the issues, what are the wins, what are the next steps. Essentially, what is happening, what is going on, what information do you need to have, and how can you handle or do you leave the project in the hands of the supervisee, or do you step in more here, or do they need you for any particular thing? So you can help prefer solutions if you have better information. So a good report gives you information that you can use to prefer solutions or have informed opinion as to the state of the project. So that's why it's essential. So the problem about reports, we know why we write reports, right? So what happens when a report is written badly? Well, it leads to a loss of time, right? Confusion and all that, but it leads to a loss of time, right? The time you would have spent preferring a solution, or the time you would have spent making informed comments, you will spend that time clarifying. So time for brainstorming is being sacrificed for clarification. So, and that clarification wasn't necessary if the report had just carried all the information that was needed beforehand. So why would you need to ask who was responsible? Why did this happen? Why would you need to ask who, what, and why, or how, if the report had carried all that when it came in the first place? That's the problem with bad report. So now we've established the problem with the bad report. That leads to a loss of hours. The person's hours, the person who sent the report, the sender and the recipient, 2 man-hours being lost due to clarification that didn't need to happen in the first place, right? So now we've established the problem of bad report. What are the main parts of a good report? So the main parts of a report in general, not necessarily a good report, is the title, highlights, lowlights, in-focus activities, which are the next steps you take in the course of a project or a program, the main content or the body, and then status indicators. So we'll start with the title. So this title is the entry point. The title is the first thing that calls the attention of whoever is receiving your report, right? Is their entry point, as I mentioned earlier, is their entry point into your report. So why does this matter? Or why does it matter if this is well written or not? Well, since it's their entry point, it's also a determinant of whether they will even think about your report or not, right? It's the first stage that you use to determine, are we going to spend time clarifying or are we going to spend time brainstorming? Why is that? So imagine this. You have two examples here. You have a title that says weekly updates, and you have a title that says Peculiar weekly progress report. So you can look at it like, okay, weekly updates. Weekly update on what? Weekly updates from who? Weekly updates for what period, right? So that's already, like, you're already entering into the clarification process. You're already going into that phase, right? But Peculiar weekly progress report, you already know what it's about. You already know it's about a product, not a project. It's a place like environment at Lendsqr that usually has meeting notes, project delivery reports, product owner reports, and go live updates. You need to specify what kind of report this is. Is it product? Is it meeting notes? Is it project delivery? Is it go live update? So from Peculiar weekly progress report, we already know that, first of all, we already know two things from 4 lines. We already know that this is a product report, and we already know that this is weekly. March 27, we know the period being considered for the week ending March 27, and we know the sender, Ogenemara. So in a pretty line, or in a relatively long or short line, you have the weekly report as it is, right? Every information provided the way it's supposed to be provided, and the title didn't even have to be long. It didn't have to be that long, right? So the next thing is highlights. So highlights are good news. What went well? What happened? Include the numbers where possible. Include the numbers of people who did well. The numbers of people, including the numbers that we accomplished, right? What we achieved. What metrics went up. What unfavorable metrics went down, and things like that. So highlights is not just good news. Not just say something happened. You have to be specific as to what exactly happened, right? So we worked in the dashboard. A place like Lendsqr has multiple dashboards. We have multiple systems. So this already doesn't even tell us what is this person talking about, what system is this person referring to. And some users liked it. To what extent? Some users, how much is some? Is some 60%? Is some 40%? So some users like it. Is that most, right? See, we're already entering into the clarification phase. So that already tells you that that's not good. But good, we connected the support system to Slack. Okay, support, Slack, platform, system, our support system. We already know we're dealing with a communication channel, right? Or March 15th, we already know the date. So whoever is responsible, or whoever is the recipient of this report, we already know that, okay, there's a date here. Is this past due, or is this on time? This lets the team see customer questions right away. The impact, right? Or that the benefits, right? So what's the impact of this order? So what effect does this benefit have on our metrics, right? Customer wait time dropped by a reduction in a favorable metric, and ratings improved from 4.2 to 4.7, increased a favorable metric. So we already see the examples there with highlights. So lowlights is the other end of the spectrum, right? The things we did not want to happen, the things that happened and we did not foresee, that are possibly led to delays. So you own up to these things, right? Sometimes they may be your fault, sometimes they may not, but the whole point of a lowlight section is to communicate it in such a way that you own up to it, you own the barrier, you own the delay or the unfortunate circumstance, right? So what does that mean? We take this so seriously that we have 6 elements you should include when describing a lowlight. You have to include what went wrong, when it happened, why, who was involved, how it's being fixed, and how to prevent it next time, right? So for an example of this, the equity contribution feature wasn't fixed on time. We went back to development and waited for it to be fixed. So essentially what this means is we know what happened and we know what happened next, I guess, to some extent. But while waiting, what do you mean by you're waiting for it to be fixed? Is it passively, like, what have you submitted it to any system? Who was supposed to fix it? Like, what exactly went wrong? See, more clarification. However, in the good example, you see the equity contribution feature is late because it didn't pass testing. What happened? That is what happened. On March 11, the developer who was involved, John Doe, delivered a version that didn't match what was requested. So this is why the equity contribution feature is late, because developers submitted a feature that did not match, and their data attached as well. So we've assigned extra help to fix it, what we're doing, and then going forward, meaning how we're going to prevent this occurrence from happening in the future. We'll check requirements more carefully. So we'll clarify that before testing. So with this, you've already answered the 6 questions. What went wrong? Equity contribution feature didn't pass testing. When? March 11. Why it happened? John Doe submitted a version that did not meet the requirements. Who was involved? John Doe and the testing team. Has it been fixed? Assigned extra help to fix it by a specific date. Then how to prevent it next time while checking requirements and more carefully. So in-focus activities or in-focus activities, aka next steps. So these are essentially the next things that occur either naturally over the course of the project timeline or as a result of the low light. So these are activities that you perform either due to the previous activities that are going on. So an in-focus activities or a next step can either occur because it is time, right? According to the project schedule, okay, we're supposed to do this now, or okay, this low light led to this, led to this, led to this, and now we have to do this. Next steps, right? So, an example of next step, next week we're working on finishing overdue tasks. You can already see why this is wrong, because overdue, what do you mean by overdue tasks? What tasks, right? And fixing issues. What issues? We'll try to resolve all pending tickets. It's so much generalization that it essentially provides no information whatsoever, because everything is now so vague and general, right? So for the good example, we see next week we're focusing on 2 main things. So that means you're already tempering the person's expectations, right? You're already telling the recipient that, okay, we're focusing on 2 things, right? We're fixing the equity contribution feature and fixing the fee setup, right? What we're doing. Kayode, who will complete testing by April 3rd, when? And Emmanuel, another who will fix the data problems by April 4th, when, right? So you have these details all packed together. You already know what is happening next week. You know when it's happening, you know the deadlines, and then you know who is responsible for this task, right? While creating a checklist, once again, you already know preventive measures. Main content is essentially your highlights, lowlights, and in-focus activities, all in a more expanded portion, right? So you're making these things, you're combining all these things into a section, and you're making it more expansive. How you make it more expansive? You're probably providing the goal of the whole thing in the first place, right? You're providing more background, you're providing more context as to why this particular activity matters, why it makes sense. So there are 10 things, since it's such a core part of a relatively longer part of the report. Obviously, there are 10 things you have to include. What needs to be done, what the goal is, what has been done so far, what's causing delays, who's responsible, what's been done. So think of it as you started your project on this particular day. You're going to send a report on this day. So your body should carry everything you've experienced or everything you've done over the course of that period. So the body should carry everything you've done since your last report, or everything you've done since the beginning of the project, if this report you're sending is your first. So remember what I said about your report being the only window the recipient has into your project. So this is the part, this is the window, right? This is the part that will really bring the person in. So this is where you really tell the person, this is where you prove yourself that you've done the work, you've tried your best to meet deadlines, you've encountered certain issues, and you are laying everything out to the person on the other end who is going to be viewing this or who's going to be reading your report. So an example of this is the fee setup is still being worked on and testing is delayed because of some issues. Developer is making changes. Once again, some issues. What issues? Which developer is making changes? Well, good. So that's why it's not good. But the good part, or the better version, the fee setup feature will let lenders adjust fees more easily. Goal, the whole point, right? Development finished on March 10, right? And testing began on March 12. You already have dates here. Testing stopped because of missing rules, which we told Coyote, who was involved, about on March 14th, right? That means they are giving timelines, right? Yeah, you are giving the person a clearer picture, more detailed picture of things. Like, okay, so this thing finished on 10th and 12th, and they informed this person about this on 14th. He fixed those issues by March 18th, but we found some problems in the team. So they're already giving you a timeline. They're already giving you the timeline of everything that's happened since the report last to this present time. So they're now using a checklist for financial features to prevent these problems. Once again, preventive measures for the future. So for indicator status, we have these color codes and these statuses that we use in Lendsqr. For pending, which are tasks that their time in the schedule hasn't arrived yet. Ongoing, their time has arrived and we're working on it. Overdue, their time has arrived and passed and we're still working on it. Completed, cancelled, priorities changed, alternatives were found, minds were changed, people were no longer interested, so they canceled the thing. Blocked, an activity was supposed to happen and is dependent on another activity, but this other activity has taken more time than it should have, and now this activity is blocked, right? So in a scenario, a client needs training. A client needs training from two separate teams. A client needs training from the finance team and from the product team. So the finance team, their training is supposed to start March 29. The product team, their training was supposed to end March 28. However, the product team, their training is still ongoing. You cannot start the finance training until you're done with the product training. So, however, the product team, their training is still ongoing. So what does that mean? It means that the finance training is blocked by the time you get to the time it's supposed to start, and it can't be started because a preliminary activity which it is dependent on has not been completed. So now you have a blocked activity. So how to build a good report step by step. This is essentially a summary of everything we've talked about so far. Write a clear title, list your wins, your highlights, be honest about problems and how you're fixing them, your lowlights, clearly say what's coming next, info activities, next steps, give details, updates, status indicators, progress updates with the right color codes. And keep the format consistent, which builds into this point also on this page about using the same structure. So when you name, especially when it comes to titles, so when you name each of your reports the same way or the same manner, the only difference would be maybe the period under consideration. So for example, Pecunia Weekly Update, right? If you name something Pecunia Weekly Update March 7 and then something else Pecunia Weekly Update March 14, Pecunia Weekly Update March 21st, Pecunia Weekly Update March 28. So you already know what each of those reports are. So when you're searching for any particular one, the only thing you're looking at is it March 14? Is it March 21st? But now imagine if you had named the one for March 21st something else like Pecunia Progress, something like that, right? That already messes up the search, right? So rather than just using the same term and just searching for the particular period you're concerned with, you're having to include another terminology, you're having to include other things. It's not consistent, it doesn't show professionality in any way, and that's the issue with that. So for better reports, you just have to be brief, focus on the results, focus on everything you're doing, use the numbers to support or buttress your points, and always include numbers and specifics where needed or where you can is highly necessary. So a wrap up, a good report shows what's happening. You're able to balance success and challenges. You're able to set clear next steps. So you're able to help people make decisions, you're able to keep a record of what happened, and it shows you're professional. So you just have to remember that your report is a story you're telling to somebody who doesn't have as much information as you and doesn't have as much context as you. So you will use the report to provide all these things. And hopefully you provide these things in such a way that it doesn't lead to questions that should have been answered, but it leads to questions that will provide clarity on whatever solutions are needed in the future. So go forth and tell a story that matters, tell a story that's smart, tell a story that leads to smart questions and smart opinions being formed. Thank you.